The three marks of existence, also known as the three characteristics of existence or the three marks of conditioned existence, are fundamental concepts in Theravada Buddhism that provide the core foundation for understanding the nature of reality and the path to liberation from suffering. Impermanence, anicca. Impermanence refers to the fact that all conditioned phenomena are in a constant state of flux. Nothing remains the same. Everything is subject to change, and this change happens continuously, moment to moment. The Buddha taught that everything that arises due to causes and conditions is subject to decay and death. The body, thoughts, emotions, feelings, and perceptions are constantly changing. Even concepts like birth, aging, illness, and death are impermanent because they are dependent on the existence of a being. The Buddha emphasized that recognizing impermanence is a key to understanding the nature of existence and the causes of suffering. Unsatisfactoriness, dukkha. Unsatisfactoriness or suffering is the second mark of existence. Dukkha encompasses not only physical pain, but also mental anguish and dissatisfaction. The Buddha identified three kinds of dukkha. 1. Dukkha, the suffering of pain and suffering such as physical pain, illness, and loss. 2. Viparinama dukkha, the suffering of change such as the impermanence of pleasure or the dissatisfaction that arises when something desirable disappears or changes. 3. Sankhara dukkha, the suffering of conditioned existence, which is the inherent unsatisfactoriness of conditioned phenomena due to their impermanent, empty, and non-self nature. The Buddha taught that all conditioned phenomena are unsatisfactory because they are impermanent, not under our control, and ultimately not able to provide lasting satisfaction. This insight is important because it helps us recognize that our attachment to impermanent and unsatisfactory things is the cause of suffering. No self, anatta. Anatta, or no self, is the third mark of existence. It refers to the fact that there is no permanent, unchanging, independent self or soul in any individual being. The Buddha taught that the idea of an unchanging self or soul is an illusion created by the mind's attachment to the five aggregates: form, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness, which constantly change. The Buddha explained that the self is not something that exists independently of the aggregates, but rather it is a concept that arises dependent on these changing phenomena. The Buddha's teaching of no self is sometimes misunderstood as nihilism, but it is actually about seeing things as they truly are without the distortions of the ego. The concept of no self is quite complex and can be difficult to understand. To explain further, it's helpful to look at the Buddha's teaching on dependent origination. This teaching states that all phenomena arise in dependence on other phenomena and nothing exists independently. When we closely examine the five aggregates, which make up our experience of self, we find that they are all dependent on other factors and are constantly changing. Form, or the physical body, is dependent on the elements of earth, water, fire, and air. Form, or the physical body, is the first of the five aggregates. It refers to the physical matter that makes up the body, as well as the physical senses. It is dependent on the elements of earth, water, fire, and air, which constantly change and decay. The second aggregate is feeling, which refers to both physical and mental sensations. Feelings can be pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, and they arise dependent on contact with external stimuli. Perceptions, the third aggregate, are the mental interpretations of our experiences. They arise dependent on our past experiences and conditioning. Mental formations, the fourth aggregate, include volition, attention, and other mental states that direct our behavior and thought patterns. They arise dependent on our mental conditioning and are constantly changing. Finally, consciousness, the fifth aggregate, is the awareness of our experience. It is dependent on the other four aggregates and is also constantly changing. The Buddha taught that none of these aggregates are the self because they are all impermanent, changing, and dependent on other factors. Instead, they are like a bundle of processes or conditions that interact with each other.